This is Real Motherfuckers Podcast, where I, Vanessa Anderson, ask all the uncomfortable questions so you don't have to. Let's do this. My next guest, Trevor Millar, was featured in the award-winning documentary called Dosed, about using magic mushrooms and Ibogaine to treat addiction, anxiety, and depression. He's also the co-founder of Ambio Life Sciences, a state-of-the-art program that combines somatic and therapies with powerful psychedelic therapies in a medically supported environment. So this year was one of the first years I actually met somebody who had done Ibogaine, that had gone through something traumatic. She was a guest on my podcast. She was a sex trafficking victim, and she raved about how she healed from Ibogaine. And she was able to describe her experience, but after I interviewed her, I wanted to dive so much deeper into this treatment plan and how this really works. And the reason being is, if somebody's listening out there that is searching for an answer to their pain, to their addiction, to anything that's corrupting them to be the full human that they are here to become and be, I would love to be part of that, even whoever, and then I saw you, Trevor, on a podcast, and your name had been thrown around, and I thought, I am going to contact Ambio Life, and this seemed like the perfect place to be educated on this experience and treatment. So I would just want to thank you for being on today, Trevor, and I'm very excited to dive into this whole
Absolutely.
psychedelic trip with you.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So I would just say, some people I would say most of our culture and our world knows what Ibogaine is and the experience. But can you just briefly, say where it comes from, how it came to be now, and how it would, I know it's an ancient natural product, but I would like people to understand where it came from, how we realized again that could heal us. Can we start there today, please?
For sure. So Ibogaine comes from a plant that is native to West Africa. It's called the Iboga plant, Tabernanthe iboga. And that plant has been used ceremonially for centuries. It's actually the second layer of root bark on that plant that has the healing capability and psychoactive healing capability. So there's a tradition called the Bwiti tradition that grew out of the use of that medicine. That tradition has been around for at least centuries, if not millennia. And in 1962, somebody who was addicted to heroin in New York City, he tried Ibogaine. He had a chemist buddy who recommended it to him, just because he knew this guy was into drugs, basically. And he went on this incredible journey, a powerful 24-hour long journey, and he came out the other end. He said, wow, I'm never going to do that again. But then, time passed and he realized, wait a second, I haven't wanted heroin the whole time I've been on this, nor do I want it now. So that's when its anti-addictive properties were discovered. And that man's name was Howard Lotzoff, and he, over the years, became a real champion for this medicine. He started the Global Ibogaine Therapy Alliance. He set up the first guide to standards of care with Ibogaine, and kind of the underground Ibogaine world grew out from that. So it is Ibogaine's one molecule of the Iboga plant, and it was outlawed in 1972, I believe, in the States, just when so many other psychedelics were outlawed for the fact that they were psychedelic. Psychedelic means mind or soul manifesting. Ibogaine's a very unique one, but I think it definitely does do that. It kind of creates a dreamlike or lucid dream type situation. And it was outlawed, but it was legal in Canada for a long time. It's legal in places like Mexico, where I am now, or at least not regulated. There's basically a UN treaty that outlaws a whole bunch of drugs globally, basically, and thank goodness Ibogaine just kind of missed the mark and didn't make it onto that treaty. So that's why some countries it is still available. So that's how I got into working with this medicine in The early 2000s, I was looking at a way to give back in Vancouver, BC, where I'm from. And it has a neighborhood called the Downtown East Side, which is a very high rate of poverty, high rate of drug use. And I just started looking at how I might help that neighborhood out. Ibogaine came on the radar as a way to potentially help. And a few years later, I started working with it. In 2012, I was able to legally work with it in Vancouver in Canada until 2017. And then Health Canada changed the regulatory status of it. So I haven't worked with it there since. But through that work, we treated about 200 people while I was operating there, mostly for opioid use disorder. And through that work, I was on the board of directors for a couple of nonprofits. Through one of those nonprofits, I was introduced to Amber and Marcus Capone. And they're a couple who started a nonprofit called Vets Incorporated, which Marcus is a former Navy SEAL. And they had discovered, and other veterans had discovered, that Ibogaine is very good at treating post-traumatic stress disorder and kind of, whatever that is, whatever symptoms that are generally associated with that. And they set up a nonprofit that has now helped more than 1,000 veterans go through this treatment. So we were introduced, and then I set up in Tijuana basically to serve that population. But we've also realized that Ibogaine is very good at treating traumatic brain injury. And that's actually what Marcus kind of more identified as having. He loved his job. He didn't really feel like he did have PTSD, but something wasn't right. So Ibogaine, I'm telling you this longer story to say that yes, Ibogaine is very good at helping people overcome addiction, like opioid addiction. It can get rid of a heroin addiction virtually overnight. Very good at helping with stimulant addiction, alcohol addiction as well. But it's also great at treating, now we've discovered, traumatic brain injury, PTSD type symptoms, depression, anxiety, lack of purpose, lack of meaning, kind of all these things that veterans face. And, there's a lot of regular citizens who have similar symptoms, and Ibogaine seems to be helping them as well.
Yeah, that's why I've been really wanting to get into this, because I feel, we have our culture in the Western society here with the medicine is, we have all these antidepressants and it seems like you get switched from one to another and there's all these side effects, and it seems like the cycle where you're on this high because it works and then it doesn't work and then you go to something else and then it doesn't work. So and then, all these suicides that are happening. And I feel like in our culture, I don't know if we're blind to it or if we finally realize, but all the suicides that we're having from, this younger generation that's, not coping with life, or middle, everybody, I guess, it's just, it's higher. So that there's this phenomenon that's happening in humanity where we do feel disoriented. We feel not ourselves. We have a lot that we have to take on. Like you said, maybe soldiers, first responders. There's so many professions alone that take on something daily, and we're a human being. There's only so much we can take before I feel, we fill our bucket with what we can hold in, and before we need to let it out. I wanted to also ask, okay, so the Ambio Life Science Facility, this program, I'm going to ask you a personal question.
Sure.
Have you personally gone through the treatment plan that someone goes through? Can you walk us through that? So first answer yes, and then you can say this is how it goes, or not yet. Because I know I would personally like to know that, because sometimes, doctors, I had one doctor tell my mom, I didn't know what cancer was until I had it.
Wow.
And I had been treating, and until it was my turn, it was different. So that physician changed the way that she started treating her patients based on actually taking her own treatment and saying, oh, never mind. So can you kind of go through that, please?
For sure. So, I never had any kind of acute addictions. Like, the world wasn't telling me you have a drinking problem, but I had at one point I was a cruise director on cruise ships. So it was my job to drink with passengers and then go to the crew bar afterwards. And when everybody's an alcoholic, nobody's an alcoholic. So I definitely grew up in a drinking culture. And I used a lot of illicit drugs as a younger man as well. Thankfully, never really got hooked into any of those too seriously. So I didn't approach Ibogaine specifically for that. I think I had kind of done a lot of my own work. I think a lot of the work I had done, spiritually, maybe with other medicines, just like a real honest desire to try and make a difference in the world and to try and have my life
Mm-hmm.
make an impact. I think that kind of led me to Ibogaine overall. And yeah, so I tried it early on when I started working with it. Um, I Yeah, I think it was my third or fourth time. I've done it 10 times. I think it was my third or fourth time that all this stuff came up around my drinking. I had no
Mm-hmm.
intent or desire to stop drinking when I went into that journey, but Ibogaine made it super clear that that would be a good idea, and then made it super easy to stop. And I went about 3.5 years without drinking at all. Then I started letting it in for special occasions. Then I moved to Mexico next to a brew pub, a few too many special occasions. So I did another journey a couple of years ago, and once again, it just made it super easy to stop. So I really feel like Ibogaine's great at getting people from -10 to 0. It's also really good at getting people from 0 to +10. So there's this
Mm.
optimization factor that comes with it as well. So like I say, I've done it 10 times. I don't think I've had kind of as profound a healing necessarily as some of the people we work with, because I probably
Mm-hmm.
wasn't quite as bad in need of one. But the way our
Mm.
program works, and since we've set this up in Tijuana, I have put myself through our very, the exact program that we do here. So for one, we have a house where we can bring people in to detox them. And if you're using something like, opiates or alcohol perhaps, or alcohol, if you can't stop drinking prior to coming in. If you can stop drinking for about a week prior to coming in, you can do this 5-day program I'll describe. But if you can't do that, or if you're addicted to some harder drugs perhaps, then you would come into the detox program, which could be anywhere from 10 to 21 days depending. Then kind of the 5-day program that has kind of made us famous is we'll pick people up in San Diego near the airport. We'll bring them down. They get coaching ahead of time as well. So people will get 2 coaching sessions prior to arrival. Then they'll get coaching for integration afterwards as well. So their journey really starts before they get here, their preparation at least. And then they get here on day 1. We get them settled. We do a circle. We bring up to 6 people at a time right now. So people come in groups of 6 people. Um, we'll do circle in preparation into some food. The food's incredible down here. Into the first day, we've been doing a temazcal, a traditional Mexican sweat lodge. And that's a great way to start the
Mm.
week, and really helps everybody bond and detoxes on a certain level as well. And then more food, some medical intake, and EKG. All that happens in the first day. The second day, we do some blood work first thing in the morning, into some more food, into some breath work. We find that breath is kind of like an untapped ally that it's very good to get reacquainted with prior to doing something like Ibogaine. So that'll happen that morning. Into some more, another circle for preparation, into some more food. Then we'll ask them to fast after lunch. In the afternoon, we have a one-on-one sit down with everybody with our on-site therapeutic support, some massage therapy in the afternoon, and then we'll give them an IV right before we give them Ibogaine. Then we'll circle up around a fire to start the process and do a bit of a fire ceremony where people will either state their intentions or burn a burn sheet, as we call it, which is all the stuff they would love to get rid of through a process like this. So a little bit of a mild ceremony to kick things off. We'll administer the first dose of medicine, and then we'll invite everybody up into the treatment room where we hook them up to heart monitors. And essentially the journey from that point forward is them putting on a blindfold and them just going really deep into themselves with this medicine. It's a
Oh.
medicine that really, you don't want to walk around. You become very ataxic, very shaky when you take this medicine. So it's just a lot of internal work, very introspective. For the first, I'd say 6 to 12 hours is where, if there's going to be kind of psychedelic bells and whistles like visions or auditory hallucinations, that'll happen within the first 12 hours kind of thing. And then the next day after Ibogaine is notoriously known as the gray day. Everybody feels pretty rough the day after Ibogaine, but you can't fall asleep because the medicine's still in your system. So it's just a long day, and we do a lot to help people prepare for that as well. And then they'll eventually get some sleep, and it's once they get some sleep that you really start feeling the benefits of Ibogaine. So that goes into day 4.
So I recently was speaking to someone who has been in the military for many years, and has done, is in special forces and trains people in such special forces, and has seen and done a lot of things. And I really wanted to hear his perspective on, trauma, how to deal, and those who have been around him. And it was quite interesting to just hear how, in a way, how in layman's terms he put it to me was, we're trained to do something that humans have always done, but it's a taboo thing to kill a human, in real world, in the civilian world. And then when you do that and you shoot somebody, you kill them, and they almost killed you, that high, there's nothing like it in life. There's a high that you survived, not that you took a life, but that your life was, not taken. And it's almost an addiction that you never get. And it's maybe the same addiction people get when they go hunting. There's this, not saying go out there and kill people, but that's not what his message was. It's that you receive something. There's a brotherhood that happens that no one can ever experience, that, you weren't killed, but somebody next to you was, and you knew that person and you protected each other. There's so many layers to this for our soldiers that are out there doing this as a profession, that someone who has never done that can maybe never wrap their head around. And I asked him, well, what's your advice? Because he is such a stable person from what I see from him, and he's very honest. And he said, that's why I never left the military life, because I surrounded myself with the support system. And a lot of people that leave lose it. They lose that support system. They lose that familiarity, that comfort of others knowing that you've gone through what you've gone through, and they know what that feels like. And they feel alone. And that's when a lot of the addiction starts. And that's when a lot of taking their life starts. So for me, it's like, the solution is, why wouldn't our government want to pair up with the facility like yours if they knew somebody had gone through all that, to help them transition to be a civilian, to help them to get rid of or cope. I don't even know what the right word would be for this, back to the civilian life. I guess my question is, what is our government's hesitation with this? There is such a political, it's like marijuana 30 years ago. You know what I mean? And I'm hoping that this is what this is, that Ibogaine is the new marijuana, that it will be fine when I'm a senior.
So, yeah, Ibogaine becoming the next marijuana.
Yes, I think that's where we're going. Is that what you feel this is happening, or?
I hope so. I think it's more complicated than that, because it is, Ibogaine's not something that you're going to be able to go down to your local dispensary and pick up. It does have, it is potentially dangerous. It should be used within a medical context. So it needs to be developed more like a pharmaceutical. The sad thing there is, because it's a non-patentable molecule from nature, the regular incentives are not there for pharmaceutical companies to develop it. So it's, I personally believe there's not some kind of nefarious plan to keep Ibogaine down. I just think that the system is kind of built against it. So what gives me hope, there's a few things going on. For one, there's a few state initiatives that are underway. There's a gentleman by the name of Brian Hubbard who was really trying to he's from the state of Kentucky, and a bunch of states won a bunch of money from opioid pharmaceutical companies because of the damage they cause in their state. So I think they're sitting on hundreds of millions of dollars basically. And he was really trying to get Ibogaine developed at the state level in Kentucky to have it used to treat opioid use disorder. That fell apart within Kentucky. So a new district attorney or something like that came in and shut it all down. But Brian has been moving forward with other states. Texas is one that is very actively investigating that. So if that happens, there may be a kind of a public-private partnership to try and develop Ibogaine through the drug development process.
Do you
So
think it
that
would be
gives me
tainted
hope.
though? Do you think they would change the organic form of it if it did go pharmaceutical?
Well, that's one incentive for a
Hmm.
drug development company is to try and change the molecule a little bit so that they have
Hmm.
their own patentable thing. I think
Hmm.
there is at least one company I know of that is trying to do that, and I honestly I think it's silly. I think I think there's hope. The fact that the state money is coming into it, there's just a different um, angle that can be taken. If
Hmm.
a company doesn't have to come up with the hundreds of millions of dollars required for drug development because the state's going to cover that, then maybe you
Hmm.
don't need the same kind of financial incentives on the company side of things. I don't know. We've
Hmm.
been speaking a lot about this recently. Who knows how it'll go? I think the other interesting thing is with this administration that was just voted in, Robert F. Kennedy has stated in a Twitter post some time ago that he thinks Ibogaine should be rescheduled and made
Yeah.
more available. So I think there's, I think what Ibogaine right now needs is a magic wand. And I think
Yeah.
there might be a few magic wands laying around.
Hmm.
So I have hopes that something could be done, and I'm doing what I can to help that conversation move in the right direction. But who knows? Yeah, I wish
Yes,
it
you
was
are.
so easy. Yeah, you should. I can introduce you to Brian Hubbard. He's a very cool human being. You
I
should
would
get
love
him on the
that.
podcast.
Oh,
Yeah,
I would love to have him on. I think it would be great. I actually wrote him down. I said Brian Hubbard into Kentucky, man.
yeah, yeah. I'll
I think
introduce you.
the more we can educate ourselves about this, the more there's less walls to resistance. And I noticed that with marijuana as well. Like
Yeah,
see my mom go through cancer, and if she didn't have the option, she used CBD and marijuana the beginnings of her treatment to get to get her appetite back and
yeah,
to kind of ease pain. And I thought, God, if you couldn't offer that besides these harder drugs, that they're already taking, their body can only digest so much and detox so much. It's a shame that there's still a few states out there that don't offer that to people that are in pain that would want that. So I'm just hoping that if this could save lives as it is, why wouldn't we offer this? Because isn't
hmm,
that our role in government and citizenship is to protect and also advocate for our citizens to be their best selves. It's like a no-brainer to me. So I'm glad that you see and have heard that this is going in a direction where that could possibly be available to more people. I also wanted to, this next question that I'm going to ask kind of rolls into that question is, I know there's a significant cost for this. I know my mom's going to a facility in Mexico and it is not cheap, but it's going to hopefully do her well. Are there financial options for doing these treatments? I know that I saw, and you can correct me, I think it was $7,000 or $9,000 is kind of the start to your guys' treatment. I know that not a lot of people, that's not a feasible thing for some people. Can you recommend how someone can possibly afford this? Are there plans, payment
yeah.
plans?
Well, we work with a couple of nonprofits who cover the costs for veterans. So, Special Forces veterans who have deployed at least once since 9/11, they can apply through vetsolutions.org. And then 343fund.org is an organization that is paying for first responders to come through for this treatment. And yeah, our price points are $78.50 for the 5-day program. And then if you're a veteran or first responder, it's $68.50. And then the detox program, it's longer, so it takes a
Hmm.
bit more time, but it starts at about $10,000 through up until about $20,000 for the 20-day program, 21-day program. But you know, I think we've done the math, and if we wanted to do this in the States, that $8,000 program would be $16,000.
Oh, 100%. Well, I mean, you look
Yeah,
at the programs that they have now for rehabilitations, even for, from eating disorders to, substance abuse. It's like 80 grand to go
yeah,
to a facility. I had someone that, is a suicide, survivor and advocate for this facility in Tucson that she had gone to for 3 months, and her mom had to get a second mortgage for her to go,
wow,
but it served her. I think that there's what I'm seeing is this cost seems so minimal. I mean, a vacation to Disneyland for 4 people is going to cost you $7,000-8,000, and
yeah,
it's not going to bring you the peace and happiness. It'll
yeah.
probably do the opposite.
And that's
So
the thing around, the success rate for most addiction programs is very low. So,
mhm.
meta studies of AA indicate that there's a less than 10% success rate with AA. But yeah, instead, you could spend some money on something that has a high likelihood of working. We see anecdotally anywhere from 40 to 60% success rate with certain
Mhm.
addictions. But I think with the right packaging around that, the coaching, the support, the ongoing support, which we have meetings people can continue to plug into, I think the success rate's a lot higher than that. So
That was going to be my next question, was the success rate for you guys. And also, I know going into something when you have all the support around you is so much easier to do. You're accountable, you have people around you, and then you leave and it's on you.
mhm.
Do you feel like you guys really help out, when these people are released back into the real world, like you said? Can you just name a few specific things? You said that there was, meetings or coaches that you can still maybe talk to when you leave.
Yeah,
Is
so
there?
we include in the purchase price, we include 4 coaching sessions. So that's generally broken into 2 before and 2 after. And then we have ongoing weekly meetings. So we have a meeting for um, people who are here to overcome addictions. We have weekly meetings for people who are coming through that 5-day program, weekly
Mm-hmm.
integration meetings. We have weekly integration meetings for spouses as well, spousal support for
That's great.
spouses of people who have gone through. And then we have preparation meetings as well. So yeah, those happen every single week, and people find that very helpful. And then that's kind of what the coaching is for. The coaching
Mm-hmm.
is to build a broader package around what the person is doing, and that's going to look different for everybody.
100%. And do you, when you first started doing this, do you feel like you and some people in your facility, you're hoping that their healing journey continues, but is there like a deep breath when you release people, be like, oh God, I hope they can do this?
Oh, for
Especially
sure.
in the beginning, it's like, for me, I'm at, when I drop off my child somewhere, I mean, it's minimal, but it's like, I drop my child off at camp and I'm releasing them into the real world without me being there, and just being like, I've given you the tools I think that you can survive with at this age. I hope that you can take them. I'm sure it's the same feeling for your facility, of this ownership and of this, I want to say liability, but like, you're really saying you can do this. We gave you what you can do. Is it the same feeling you feel for you
Yeah, big
guys?
time. You just root for them so much. You just hope people see success, and there is kind of a letting go. Like whenever somebody leaves, I literally go like this and kind of just give them back
Mm,
to the world at that
you
point.
have to.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm,
But it's yeah, then it's, not every treatment's it's a success. It's heartbreaking when it's not.
hmm.
And
How do you find out though? How do you guys find out when it's not? Do they come
yeah,
back? Just
so yeah,
what?
sometimes people do come back, and that's encouraging when they do, because if it didn't work the first time, it often will the second time. It's very rare that somebody's leaving and they're saying, yeah, Ibogaine didn't work for me. It's more like
Mm,
people realize that they did Ibogaine, and they kind of missed the opportunity that Ibogaine gave them, so they want to do that again. And that's for the
mm,
detoxes. And with this 5-day protocol, Um, it's a very high success rate in giving people the change they're looking for, whether it's to help them overcome their traumatic response or their depression or their anxiety. I often say that people sometimes leave feeling as though they made a 180-degree course change. Everything's awesome. Wow, I feel incredible. But then they get out there and the world didn't take Ibogaine with them. So stuff
Mm-hmm.
still happens. So maybe
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't stick at a 180-degree course change. But I think what we're very good at here is giving people a solid yet true 5-degree course change. Because a 5-degree course change carried out over 10,000 miles, you're in a completely different place than if you hadn't
Mm-hmm.
had that slight change. And I think that's what Ibogaine is very good at, is just giving somebody just a slight course change in the right direction, which sometimes looks dramatic from the get-go, but I think often looks even more dramatic a year or two down the road.
I love that you just said that it's just 5%, but in the trajectory, it's more than that. And I think we can take that into our lives with the small things we do to create a healthy
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle or whatever we do to try to improve ourselves. I think that's an encouraging number to know that minimal single digit number can do a lot.
Big time.
It, and you do, especially, you give that percentage to NASA, it does change the trajectory of a, space vessel or whatever they're launching out there. It completely changes it. It's a huge error. So what are the common, since we're on this side, I call it the downer side of our conversation. We'll
Yeah.
go up from here. But what are the common side effects? When somebody has done Ibogaine, it could
It's
be,
it's
the next day or a week, or are there
yeah,
any,
it's
what are those
mostly
few ones?
in the moment. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
generally a challenging journey. It's described as the Mount Everest of psychedelics. It's very physically taxing. So,
Mm.
like I said, you don't move around much when you're on the medicine. If you need to get up and go pee, you're very ataxic, very shaky. You're you feel kind of worse the day after than you did when you walked in the front door. So we do a lot of prep around that. Say you cannot judge the success of the week by how you're feeling on day 3. You won't have any idea on day 3 how you're going to feel on day 5.
Mm.
So it is, yeah, super challenging. So and then there is there's medical risks with Ibogaine. There's a cardiotoxicity issue that comes with Ibogaine. So we have to do proper medical screening. It's definitely not
Wow.
something that people want to do at home alone. This one for sure. We're fully medicalized here. We have 4 doctors on staff. We have a whole contingent of nurses and paramedics. At least one of those is on duty 24 hours a day while patients are here. When people receive the medicine, they're hooked up to a heart monitor. We do EKGs
Wow.
before, we ask for EKGs before arrival. We do EKGs upon arrival through the process if it's a detox client. So, yeah, you do need to be very careful when you take something like
I had no
Ibogaine.
idea. I
Yeah,
had no idea that it could do that. So that is what makes it freaky if you go to a foreign country and that's not, looked after medically, that is
yeah,
just a healing, maybe just, and I don't want to say put those places down, but it's nice that you guys are seeing the full picture of the spectrum of what could happen and have those safety procedures in place. I mean,
yeah,
that could make me, if I ever went there, I think that already makes me feel very comfortable to do that. I think because you're somewhere so vulnerable. You're in a foreign country with people that you barely know, and your body and your mind and your energy and spirit, whatever you believe is gonna go through this completely different voyage that you've never been on.
yeah.
What do you see when you're on Ibogaine? I mean, you're blindfolded and stuff. I know it's different for everybody, but do you feel like you're in another world? Do you
It's,
feel
it's called, it's described as oniric, which means as related to dreams. So it can be described for some people, and everybody's different. Not everybody gets visions, but the visions are almost like a lucid dream type experience. Sometimes
mm-hmm.
it's just kind of sheer chaos, a lot of stuff coming at you, different faces, different colors, different rooms,
Wow.
just weird random stuff. Sometimes you get crystal clear visions that make total sense and maybe help recapitulate or recontextualize something from your past or help you forgive things in your past or help you better understand things in your past. That can sometimes happen. Sometimes you get crystal clear visions that don't make any sense at all. I really feel like the visions aren't that important. You know, our medical manager, the first time she did it, she was hooked up to her heart monitor. She's a bit of a workaholic, analyzing her own heart rhythm. And she said she felt like a TV that got unplugged for about 8 hours, doesn't remember anything whatsoever.
Wow.
But tried to smoke a cigarette the next day and couldn't do it. So she quit smoking without wanting to. She made a whole bunch of other positive lifestyle changes, all without a single vision. But yeah, it's generally a very intense experience. You do feel it is an altered state. At the same time, it's not really an ego destroyer like a lot of psychedelics. You always know who you are and what you're doing. Like you may have your eyes closed, be experiencing, a vision, and then you hear a noise in the room or somebody taps you on the shoulder, and you know exactly who you are and what you're doing for the most part. If you need to get up to go to the bathroom, like I say, it's a challenging walk, but you know who you are and what you're doing.
Okay.
Yeah, but
It
super.
just seems a little freaky, but it seems so liberating to go through. It's very like
Yeah.
I'm interested in this experience, to be quite honest. I
Come
really
on
am.
down.
I know. And that brings me to my next question here. So parents, I've noticed becoming a parent, there's certain age. If what I've been told, it's a theory. What if something happened to you or the way you were treated at a certain age, that's when you as a parent, when you're parenting, that trauma comes out. You'll, maybe go through a mom rage or a parent rage of something that happened to you, and you don't want that to happen, but it's like in there. It's in there and it's coming out and you don't want to repeat it. So for me, the question is, I think this would be good for a parent to do, because I feel like if you could do this and maybe revisit some of those traumas or bad experiences or things in your subconscious and your consciousness that was put in you, whether it was, well-intended or not, parenting style, maybe you can deal with all that. And you can really push it out to be able to not repeat those patterns if they're not the ones you want to repeat, and you're constantly suppressing them as a parent and as an individual. So that's my question. I mean, would you recommend this to parents, before they parent, or if they're parenting and it's a tough time for them?
Yeah, it's a very powerful negative pattern interrupter. So if you have those kind of ingrained traumas, if they're deeply ingrained or if they're more on the surface, either way, Ibogaine seems to be very good at helping interrupt negative patterns. And so many of the people that we treat, whether they're veterans or not, they, as they come in, some of their issues is the way they're parenting. Some of the issues is being a parent and being more present for their children. And that seems to always get better for people. Children will often notice that their father has changed and he's smiling more. And what happened when you went away? Because you seem incredible now. And then so many people, that is their direct intent, is I want to be a better father. I want to be a better mother. I know I'm not there as I should be for my kids. I just sent home a group this morning, and we ask upon departure, what are a few of the things that you're going to change? And one of the guys said, family is my top priority now. I have not been prioritizing my family enough, and everything else is going to be a far second now compared to family being first. So yeah, that's a very common reason for people wanting to come here, is to become a better parent, for sure.
I think it's great. You know what I visualize as I'm learning more about this through talking with you and, seeing videos and hearing other podcasts, is I almost feel like Ibogaine can be like your deathbed in a way, where you are laying there and you're realizing your life, and you're realizing and kind of, sifting through all the shit that you've gone through or don't want to go through or do. And then you come out of it, and it's like a clearer lens of that last breath. What should I have done? What could I have done better? And it's like you almost, get to rewind from being in that deathbed and being back in your body in the moment of doing that therapy. Do you feel like that's a good analogy?
That's a great analogy. Yeah. And some people feel, the experience can be so overwhelming. You think you might die, and then, that's not going to happen if you're in the right place, but it can feel that way. And yeah, even if it doesn't feel that way, people do get this life review and do get where they are dropping the ball kind of shoved into their face so that they can be free of that. They can, you're a couple days passes and you're like, oh my God, thank God I've got a chance to do this again, to live. I can't wait to speak to my wife. I can't wait to hug my kids. Yeah, I think that's a great analogy. I think, to die before you die is such a great gift. If you can really, feel and let go and feel as though you are completely letting go of everything, surrender it all, and then to come back and realize that you have surrendered it all, and now you get to have it nonetheless. It's a beautiful process for people.
I agree that's exactly what I feel like. That would be one of my reasons to do it, is obviously to heal anything that I feel's in there that I've maybe been suppressing or maybe not even wanting to deal with, and giving myself that second chance to be the human I was supposed to be and human I can be for others. I think it's a gift that you can give yourself, but you're also gifting it to others around you that you love when you can be optimal, when you can be, get rid of your internal pollution, I guess, in a better sense to say.
Absolutely.
So I have a few more questions, and then you can add anything else that you think would be great for people to know. Is what's the youngest age you'd recommend for someone to undergo this treatment?
We just say you need to be 18 years or older. And I've had somebody walk into our facility on his 18th birthday. We had treated his father, and his father realized that his son was suicidal, and offered this to his son. His son said absolutely, came down, and he went home and burned his suicide letter, which he had already written. And I'm still in touch with that guy. He's doing incredible. And we've treated an 80-year-old now as well. So it's, personally, if it was my kid and they were suffering, I thought Ibogaine was a good option, I would probably do it anytime after the age of 12 or 13. I wouldn't personally have a problem with that. I think we're missing initiation rites that we used to have in the Western world, and I think that's exactly what Iboga is used for in Africa. So I wouldn't have a hard time, I wouldn't hesitate going younger, but as a company, I would hesitate.
Yeah.
But, if let's say there was, a 17-year-old kid severely addicted to something and really proved to me that they wanted to stop, then I would consider treating somebody like that as well. But yeah. 18 tends to be the line. Well, that's the thing.
I mean, you most suicides are, 14 to 21, the ones in our country now. And it's interesting that you said that, in Africa that they do it at 12, 13. And if you think about it, that's when you're done with your early childhood. So how nice to let go of any of the stuff, the pollution, like I just said, before you enter your next stage in life. And should that be maybe something that we could instill in the future is, these markers of life when you are shifting to the next stage in your life, to really do this and review it and be able to move on, let go, and actually look ahead with a clear vision. I think there's something to be said about it.
Yeah. Aldous Huxley wrote many books, but he wrote the book Brave New World, which I was given that in high school. I don't know why our world is so focused on the dystopian potential of the future, but Brave New World was there. Aldous Huxley also wrote a book called The Doors of Perception, which was about his first time taking mescaline. and the band The Doors took their name from that book. But he was actually working with Humphrey Osment, who is an English doctor who was working out of Canada, and they together coined the term psychedelic. But the last book Aldous Huxley wrote was called The Island, and it was his utopian vision of the future, or utopian vision of society. And it's a beautiful book. It's about an island. They have a whole bunch of different ways of living which seem oh so sane. And one of the things in that book is everybody grows up knowing that at the age of 14 they will go on a rock climbing camping trip and take the moksha medicine, moksha meaning liberation, and that's a mushroom trip. So within their society at the age of 14 they go on a supervised mushroom trip. And I think that's a very sane way of living. These substances are so good at helping at times of transition, whether it's that time of transition from a child to an adult, or from a soldier to a civilian, or whatever it is. But it's very good at helping you take that step into something new.
I agree. I think your next demographic should be middle life people. People in their, literally in the middle of your life, because it's what we just said, like deathbed experience, because we're right in the middle and we're like, this is what we did, this is what we haven't done, this is what I didn't do, this is what I want to do, and learning to let go of what you didn't do, or and accepting for who you are, and all the lessons. I love what you just said. So I'm going to rewind and acknowledge that I'm definitely going to read that book, The Island. And we are missing that. We are missing these milestones. I am trying, my husband and I are consciously trying to instill these milestones for my children to, have something to look forward to, celebrate those moments, but also acknowledge all the changes that are happening, that have happened, and that are going to happen, because we don't pause in our life, in our society. We just keep going. We just say, that's normal, you'll deal with it. And we just keep going, and we don't deal with it. We don't deal with some of the changes that are uncomfortable, or we don't like, and we think there's a quick fix with the pill, and it is when you don't want to take the time to do it. And if it works for people, I'm not saying don't do it, but I just don't think it's a long-term solution. So
have you heard of the Dr. Gabor Mate?
No.
He's a wonderful man. He's a friend of mine, relatively famous Canadian doctor, but famous worldwide now as well. He wrote a book called The Myth of Normal. And that's basically what the title is talking about, is, this society that we're living in is traumatized. We are all traumatized growing up in this world, and it is not normal. We all have kind of jangled nervous systems because of the environment we were grown up in. So it's I think normal is a myth, and we all have healing to do. And thankfully these substances are there.
I definitely agree. And I'm also thinking, if we did do this and we did shed that negative energy, that negative vibration, that a lot of doctors or holistic people say that's what causes these diseases like cancer. Your vibration's off, you're throwing off your nervous system, so other things come in and bombard your body. It's a coping mechanism or a breakdown. So it's like, say we do instill this periodically in our lives, would it decrease the possibility of our cancers coming to everyone around the world? Would we see cancer go down? Would we see so many of these things that are killing us come down? I truly believe that is what would happen. It would be great if more of us could do this and do this and see that truly be true. So I would like to end this by asking my last question, but also, when I'm done asking the question, anything that you would like to share. But I would say, someone listening to this that's saying, man, I've been struggling for a long time. I'm tried everything. I don't feel right. I need something to really help me through life. And this sounds like it could be it. Maybe if they have a hesitation to do this treatment, what advice do you have for them to maybe take a step in the direction of receiving this treatment for their benefit?
I think there's a lot of good resources out there now. Probably, I think I know who you were speaking about that did the podcast with you before. They should probably listen to her podcast episode. There's a bunch of the military guys that I've worked with have appeared on Sean Ryan's podcast, which is a great one. I appeared there. I just did a podcast with Rob O'Neill recently, the Operator podcast. Cool. So there's some good resources to dig into. That movie Dosed that you mentioned off the top, it's at dosedmovie.com. It follows one woman's journey through this process. And I just think if you feel called, then you should probably listen to that call, because I call it the Iboga vortex. If you hear about Iboga or Ibogaine and you're not interested at all, or you are a little interested. And if you are a little interested, I think it's eventually going to suck you in. So you might as well just let go of that resistance and do what will ultimately seems to be very, very good for people.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think I'm starting to get sucked into that, because that's the whole reason I approached you. I love doing this podcast, obviously for others, but it starts with my interest first. And my interest was in this to really see and be educated on it. And I really appreciate you being on and answering these questions. Is there anything that you would like to leave with besides what you just said that you think would be beneficial?
Yeah, I would just encourage people to have faith that things can work out. And when I talk about faith, I'm not necessarily talking about religious faith in some being up in the sky that is going to have your back. I think faith to me is more the opposite of fear. Fear is just an expectation, but it's an expectation of a bad thing to come. Whereas faith is really just an expectation as well, but it's an expectation of a good thing to come. And we tend to get what we aim for. So I would just encourage people to stay hopeful, to stay faithful, to keep moving forward. And if something like this sounds, Ibogaine might be a big step for a lot of people. Like I said, it's the Mount Everest of psychedelics, as people describe it. But there are lower hanging fruit as well. A therapeutic dose of magic mushrooms, or a therapeutic dose of MDMA. A lot less time, a lot less investment. And I think if you poke around some websites, you might find a local psychedelic society and might be able to bump into some people that could help you do something like that as well.
Yes, hence my cup today, my little mushroom cup.
Nice,
I have dosed
perfect.
in it. And yes, I have done mushrooms, and it was amazing. And I can only imagine if Ibogaine is the Mount Everest of that. I can't even, that's why I had to ask you, how is this? Because I already felt like I was somewhere else with it. So I'll just say I will probably be at your facility within the next year. I think this is my calling, and I cannot wait to experience it. And then I will definitely share it on the podcast once I'm done. And again, Trevor, I really appreciate your time. It's so cool that you were on all these other big podcasts and that you were on mine. So thank you for, being on mine today. I really appreciate it. We will be, sharing all the information that's needed to contact your facility on our show notes. And I already follow you. So if people will scroll onto my Instagram and see who I follow, that your guys's Ambio Life Sciences is already on there. And
Instagram, it's at Ambio Life Sciences. Me personally, it's at psychedelic_provider.
_provider. Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll definitely keep in contact. I would love to keep pushing this movement forward, especially if it can save somebody's life, especially. Beautiful. So thank you. Would it suck if you didn't have this podcast around? Well, by having your support, it can stay on. There are bills to pay, motherfuckers. If you're listening on Spotify, click the About title on our podcast page, and then you'll see the underlying support link. Monthly contributions range from 99 cents to $9.99 a month. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, scroll down the episode you just listened to and click on https://patreon.com and hit membership. Your support goes a long ways. Thank you so much for listening, and pass this episode, this whole podcast to somebody you think that would enjoy it. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.